Welcome back. This is the second video in the series for coach accounts on Khan Academy. The first video covered how to create your account and how to create your class, and this video will give a brief overview of how to make use of the data that's generated by Khan Academy and how to use that data to make suggestions for your students. So I'm going to log in. I prefer to log in using Google. So click on Login to Khan Academy with Google. It's going to ask which account. There's the account. Sometimes it's going to ask me, do I want to give Khan Academy permission to access my Google account? If it asks that, say allow. And then eventually it will log me in so I can access my page. Internet seems to be going a little slowly at the moment. There we go. Okay, so I go to my dashboard, and here are my classes. So I have this one class, 5L 2014, and right from the dashboard I can go right to student progress, skill progress, or managing the class. And I can also get there from across the top. I tend to use the bars across the top. Managing students, that's kind of like what the last video covered, which was adding students to your class or removing students from your class. Student progress and skill progress is mostly what we're going to focus on today, and we'll also take a brief look at some of these other options across the top. So student progress gives me both an overview of the class's progress as a whole, along with some more detailed information on each student. It usually does not take this long. Okay, so here is my overview for this class, 5L 2014, the progress that they've made in this mission, which is 4th grade. And I could, I wanted to see 5th grade progress, I could switch that as well. And I see here that, while most of my students are kind of in the middle or nearing the end of 4th grade, some of them have completed it. And if I hover over that bar, it shows me, Sally Ride and Kate Upton are all done with 4th grade. Sarah Bing and Sarah Upton are very close to being done, as are these 3 students as well. So, and then I can see, well, out of the ones who are finished, Kate Upton is zipping ahead and almost 70% done with 5th grade. Sally Ride is 60%. Sarah Upton is 50%. And going back to 4th grade, I can see, Kendall Schaub is falling behind, might need to have a little extra support, as are Megan Durant and Ski 111, are all a little bit behind, so we might want to talk to them. And one of the things that we're going to go through is how does the data paint a picture of that? So you can say, these students are way ahead, these students are way behind. What's causing it? Well, first thing, let's look at their activity from the last 7 days. And I can change this as well. There's a lot of flexibility with how you view the data, which is great. But first, let's just take a quick look at the last 7 days. And I see, for example, Kendall has spent 86 minutes in the last 7 days. Not so bad. Earned 5,000 points. But let's compare. So it seems like some of the other students are spending a lot more than that. Some are spending less, right? Like Malala Boom is has only spent 47 minutes and is 60% done. So this student I might at first categorize as one who is doing okay, not the total bottom of the class, but is doing okay with not putting in as much time. And I see that Smitty Wright seems to be in a similar category where they have less time than many of the students in the class, but they're not the absolute bottom, but they probably would benefit from more time. Let's see if we have anyone here. Layla Marrows has a decent amount of time. Again, decent. And then the ones in the top, 186, 170, 189, 121, 20. So in general, it seems like there's a bit of a meritocracy here where the students who are putting in the most time are getting the best results, and they're moving ahead. When I see a student, now here's one that's a bit of an outlier. So Sydney Marcoon has spent 397 minutes and still 70% complete. So this tells me the student is working hard, and they're not among the top, but for Sydney, it seems like all that hard work is getting her just to be the top of the middle clump of students. So that's some of the information that you can get from a quick glance, and I can zoom in on particular students to get even better detail. So let's look at Ava. We know Ava's spent 111 minutes in the past 7 days, has mastered 8 skills over this time period, and is struggling with 1. And we can compare that to Sydney, who has spent, as we said, 397 minutes, has mastered 26 skills, which is quite a few, but is struggling with 9. So again, that confirms our earlier impression that this student is trying really hard, getting a lot of skills mastered, and probably coming from behind. Has 51 skills mastered altogether, and 26 of those came in the last week. So I might say, well, I wonder, what does this person's activity profile look like over, instead of 7 days, let's look at the last 30 days. Okay, so I already see popping up over here that the time data has come through, and Sydney, over the past 30 days, has spent more time than anybody else in the class. So that tells me this isn't just a brief phenomenon. This is a kid who's been putting in a decent amount of effort all along. Okay, we see consistent daily effort. I can also, when I hover over the bars, I can see exactly what is being done each day. I also notice that when I look at this this red line, the red line is the energy points. So it's kind of like it measures in some way like how much they've accomplished at that time. And generally, I want to see the red lines roughly touching the tops of the bars. The bars are the number of minutes they've spent, and the red line is the points that they've earned. So if I see somewhere like here, this looks like for some reason the student put a lot of time that day and didn't earn as many energy points. Here, they didn't put in a lot, but they earned a ton of energy points. But that's explained by the badge. Like when they earn a badge, particularly an Earth badge, that's a lot of points, so that's probably why they got a ton of energy points on that day. But generally, for the most part, we can see they're roughly correlating, so I'm not too concerned. If a student had a really high bar and a really low energy consistently, I would generally get the idea that that student might be wasting time or doing things like watching tons of videos and not really answering questions, because you get some points for a video, but you get more points when you answer questions correctly or earn badges, things like that. So that's what I'm looking for, some kind of divergence between the red and the blue will give me certain information. Can also look at individual skills, and I could see Sydney has mastered all of her mission foundations, which is great. That's kind of like the review from last year. So in a 4th grade level, the mission review would be the 3rd grade, kind of the basics that they need to have before they start the 4th grade course. I also see mission addition and subtraction are mastered. Okay, so those are nothing to worry about. Then we get into multiplication. We see one struggling skill in multiplication. Most are mastered. Some have not been attempted yet, but multi-step problems with whole numbers she's struggling with. And that's, not total shock. A lot of students have a hard time with word problems and with multi-step problems. So those two things together, are likely to make a challenge. Now I see even more red when we get to fractions and geometry, especially. So what are we struggling with here? We have using fractions to divide pizzas, pies, and cakes, converting mixed numbers and improper fractions, understanding multiplying fractions and whole numbers, multiplying fractions and whole number word problems. Well, that's not a surprise. If you're having a hard time with multiplying fractions and whole numbers, then you probably won't be able to do word problems on that topic. So already I get a sense, and we're converting mixed numbers and improper fractions, that maybe it's the mixed numbers. When we're doing things that involve fractions and whole numbers mixed together, then she has a problem. But she does seem to be doing well with things that are just fractions, except using it to divide pizzas, pies, and cakes. So those are some things that we might want to go over with her. Geometry, drawing raised lines and line segments, struggling understanding angles, benchmark angles, and again, that would be something to review. I like to start with some of these other things, so I would say I would focus on getting the word problems and the fractions done, and then we'll look a little more at geometry, especially for a student that's having a hard time. So I'm going to look at the recommendations and see what I've recommended to Cindy. So these ones at the bottom are things that I've recommended and she's addressed. Okay, so it seems like she's done a pretty good job of addressing the recommendations I've made for her. Understanding fractions and divisions. She did 65 questions on that topic. So again, we see this is a kid who's really, putting in a lot of effort and, getting some decent results. Hopefully, over time, we'll keep getting stronger. And then these gray ones are the suggestions that she has not addressed since they've been suggested. And I can set due dates. I generally have not used that as much, but that is an option when you make a recommendation. Okay, I can search for certain skills at any progress, or I could say I just want to see skills that she needs practice with. Whole numbers on the number line, multi-digit multiplication. These might show as needs practice because they're from a previous level, right? Like they could be from 3rd grade. So you generally want to look around a little bit before you find out what skills you want to add. So I generally add skills from a different screen, and I'll show you that in a minute. But you can add recommendations from here if you come across something like, oh, this student, I saw that this skill has not been addressed, right? Multiplication using place value understanding. I could say, let's do, I've already recommended that one. So that's something that's already on her list. But if it were not, then that might be something I add with the recommendation. I can also see what videos she's watched. So this tells me too, this is something that she was struggling with. I saw intro to line segments and raise, and she watched a video for 2 minutes on that. So here's another one, multiplying, understanding by using area models, intro to lines. So all these videos, she watched. So she spent 16 minutes watching these videos on October 18th. And let's see how much time she spent altogether on October 18th. She was on for 2 hours on that day, right? And this blue portion is how much in videos. So this looks like a really good pattern of hard work. There's a balance where when she needs the help, she's watching the video, but she's not just watching videos. She has actually answering a lot of questions. And though she's struggling on a couple, I think it's a very healthy work pattern. So I really like this, to see this type of work from a student. You can also look at focus, which gives me a diagram of what they're focusing on. So I see a lot of this visualizing equivalent fractions. So this student clearly is on the verge of becoming an expert of fractions, still doing some work with it, but has made pretty good progress. There's also badges. These are all badges and how many points you get for each one. So that was that one day where she had a ton of points. She earned a workhorse badge where you need to do, I think, 50 skills mastered, and then you get a big bump. And the points, the badges are more, I think, for the kids. They're a motivating factor. That doesn't tell me too much. I get more information from the things that I've just shown you. The activity is particularly important, and the skills, and also I like to see whether or not they're addressing the recommendations I've made. I can also view skill progress in a different form, which is kind of like the graph I see for the kids, but this shows me for the whole class. So for those mission foundations we were talking about, most of the kids have it, but I can figure out who doesn't. And Megan Durant and Kendall Schaub are struggling with that. It's already been recommended to them, so that would be a place to check in and say, hey guys, what's going on with these two-step word problems, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division? And then I can look again. Oh, everybody, this dark blue bar means everybody in the class has mastered this addition and subtraction, multiplication and division. Again, mostly there. Some of these bars like this, multi-digit division without remainders, everybody's got it. Here, one person is gray, which means one person in the class hasn't attempted it. That's Kendall, and I've already recommended it to her. So come on, Kendall. At least give it a try, right? If they've tried it and they can't do it, then I'll see them struggling. But here, it's been recommended, but they haven't tried it yet. And it's also useful for me to see something like this that says a little more than half so a little less than half the class has it mastered. Then a small portion has worked on it, but not yet mastered it. A bunch haven't tried it, and there's a few who have tried it that are having a hard time, multi-set word problems with whole numbers. So that might be something to do as a full class activity. Maybe go through a few problems from this activity. So I could say multi-set word problems with whole numbers in class, go up to the search bar, multi-step word problems with whole numbers, and then maybe we do this as a whole group activity. Answer some of these questions. Okay, and then you can also see here, they have some options. Teach me how, show me a worked example, I'd like a hint, watch a video. So we can do a few of these at the class and say, all right, everybody sit down and give that a whirl. So that's a great way to use the data to inform what you're actually doing as a class activity, either for everybody in class or for small groups. Sometimes what I'll do also is you look at this and you say, okay, so let's make a table of all these kids. They're going to do that, and then we'll do another table with these kids and maybe find something else that these kids need to work on, a bit more of an advanced skill, so that you're giving actually different assignments to different kids. A grid is also a pretty cool one, and this is another way to help out with grouping. This is probably, I think, the best way if I want to do groupings or decide a certain activity, because it gives me a grid layout of where everybody in the class is on a certain activity. So here, all this stuff looks pretty solid. It's mastered, and as I scroll over, I see a few isolated, like, oh, everybody's got this except this one kid is struggling, and then these two kids haven't addressed it. So maybe do a small group with those three on comparing with multiplication or multiplication and division word problems. Then we get to stuff that hasn't been addressed. But what I'm looking really for here is a big block of red like this. So adding and subtracting mixed numbers with unlike denominators. Not shocked that a lot of kids are having a hard time with that because we haven't done that in class. But it does tell me that that's on the list. It would be even more telling if I saw something like this on something that we had done in class. Let's see, quadrilateral types. Again, not something we've covered. So for the most part, I'm pretty. I think this class is in pretty good shape. Here, rounding to the nearest 10 or 100, this is something that they should have down. So and you'll see sometimes kids are, fine. They can round to the nearest 10 or 100, but fractions as division by a multiple of 10, or some kids might have trouble with one thing and they're fine with another. So you don't need to remediate the entire class for something, or you don't need to remediate. One kid doesn't need remediation on every topic, but maybe they need certain topics remediated more than others. Activity is kind of a broader view of all the activity, how much time they've spent in class versus home. I find this somewhat useful, but a little bit hard to read because of all the stripes, but it is another way to, the outside of school hours versus during school hours tells you, are they doing it at home, or are they just doing it at school? And then this is a cool one, it's real time, which right now you're not seeing anything because the kids aren't working. But if I want to have a time where they do some of this during class, I can put this up on the projector, and then every time kids earn energy points, the thing goes, oh, somebody's doing it right now. So this is how many points people are earning. So somebody is at home doing this for homework, and if I put this on the screen, it can be a cool, motivating, fun thing where the kids are trying to get up to a certain level and say, oh, well, the other class, they got up to 1,000 energy points per minute at one point. Can you beat that? And then so they're answering questions to earn energy points, and it's just a fun little thing. So that should give you hopefully a good start to using this. The more you use the data and the recommendations, the more comfortable you'll get with it. I would also suggest answering some of the questions. So, because by going through the activities, you're going to really understand what the kids are working on. And yeah, there are just a ton of ways to incorporate this as a whole group, as a small group, or as a one-on-one learning tool. And it never hurts to have more information and more data and be able to give individual assignments to each kid. So hopefully you find this helpful and your students find it enjoyable and helpful as well.